made?
Well, thank you very much, Michelle, for having me here. As you correctly stated, Somaliland gained its independence on 26 June 1960, and soon afterwards voluntarily joined with the Italian Somalia and formed what was known as the Republic of Somalia. And however, that union has not been successful, and Somaliland declared its independence in 1991 and has been seeking for its independence since 1991, which is almost 30 years. While, as you said, we have not been recognized, we have been engaging with the international community, and we have been having a close relationship with our neighbors, Ethiopia, Djibouti, Kenya, as well as other African countries. We've also been reaching to other countries in Asia, Europe, America. Somaliland has offices, active offices, or what they call mission or liaison office in more or less 27 countries. And we also have countries that have representations here in Hargeisa. The fact that we have an office here in Nairobi signifies, the move that Somaliland has made. So to come back to your questions, even though we have not been recognized, we are engaging the international community on trade, security, and many fronts.
Let's talk about the fact, like you mentioned, Somaliland has its own currency, its own military issues, its own passport holds, its own elections. Many would ask then, why has Somaliland for the longest time been tied to Somalia? Why is it not a separate country as we speak?
I think the fact that, as you said, Somalia hasn't had a government, a stable government in the past. For that, it has been very difficult for Somaliland to engage with Somalia so that we can, finalize our relationship and go our separate ways. We have, been talking to the international community and trying to gain, independence through the UN and other platforms. However, that has been that, the fact that the situation in Somalia has not been settled has made it difficult. But we are, in terms of getting the recognitions, as you stated, we have had discussions with talks between Somalia and Somaliland started a couple of years ago. I believe it was 2012. Since then, there has been talks that happened in London, in Dubai, in Addis, Djibouti, and in Ankara. Just recently, a couple of weeks ago, the two presidents met in Djibouti and discussed the way forward with the president of the international community. So we are hopeful that very soon the day will come that Somaliland gets independence. And rest assured that we will leave no stone unturned until we get that.
As a self-declared autonomous state, Somaliland has formed its own diplomatic relations with neighboring countries. What is the state of relations between Somaliland and Kenya, and how can both countries stand to benefit from the mutual relations?
Michelle, it's a good question. Somaliland and Kenya relationship goes back pre-colonial. They have very cordial relationship. I don't know if you recall it, but during the pre-colonial, when Lord Delamere actually traveled from British Somaliland and came to Burkina Faso, it was the Somaliland, the famous Somaliland army known as Somaliland Camel Corps, who accompanied him and traveled with him. And those Somalilanders are now living in Kenya in 3 or 4 generations. And they are contributing to the Kenyan society. They are in all different sectors of Kenyan community, businesses, government and other sectors. So we are very proud of that, historical links. On the other hand, there are significant numbers of Kenyans who are living in Somaliland and doing many things. For instance, University of Mount Kenya has launched a branch in Hargeisa, where they are teaching. We also have Kenyan schools led by Kenyan businessmen. We have Kenyans who are working on the hospitality, on the constructions, in the finance, so you name it. And I believe, if I'm not wrong, they're the largest Kenyan community in East Africa currently. I think if we are not number 1, we probably are number 2. So for that reason, the relationship is very strong. I've been here in Kenya for 2 years now, but we've had this office over 7 years. And relationship we have with Kenya is very strong. We have been able to organize visits for our officials from government of Somaliland, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Minister of Finance and other branches to come and have their meetings with their counterparts. We've organized the investment forum here in Nairobi, which we did, which went very well for 2 consecutive years. We are hopeful that the Kenyan office will be open soon in Hargeisa. As we speak today, there are Kenyan delegations in Hargeisa. So things are looking very promising, and we are hopeful. We are, on the other hand, waiting that the Kenya will join, or will be the first country, hopefully, to recognize and fully acknowledge the achievement that Somaliland has made.
All right, even amid the clamor for international recognition, the port of Berbera, its development, for example, I mean, it is a commercial capital of Somaliland. Speak to us about its development and its importance in the Horn of Africa and its economy.
Well, the port of Berbera, as you mentioned it, is currently operated by DP World, which is a Dubai port company owned by UAE government. I was actually the Somaliland ambassador there when the investment was made, and I'm very pleased to say that UAE has been a very important partner with Somaliland. They have, the port operator DP World is contributing 442 million into the port of Berbera, and the construction is underway, and we're hopeful by early next year that will be finished. On the other hand, Abu Dhabi Fund, which is the investment entity for Abu Dhabi government, has also allocated roughly about 100 million for the development of Berbera Airport, which is almost done, and that airport is going to be used as a logistical hub. They're also developing the corridor between Somaliland and Ethiopia. So when you look at it from that side of it, Berbera is going to be very important for the region. It's going to be very important for Somaliland, and it's going to be very important for our neighbors as well. If you just looking back in the history of it, Berbera was the reasons why the British actually went to Somaliland to secure the Red Sea corridor, which was coming from their logistical that was coming from the east all the way to the Middle East. So it had that significant importance to it. Right. And later, the Americans and the Russians were able to also build a military base. So it's very important. It has very important historical, but also we hope that it's going to be playing very important role in the future for the region. I mean,
several issues to discuss about Somaliland, Ambassador. There are fears, particularly among the African Union, that the formal recognition of Somaliland would encourage other secessionist movements across the African continent to also seek independence, a move that would threaten stability, in many regions across Africa. What is your thought on this?
Well, we say that, that's actually not the case for Somaliland. Somaliland colonial borders fulfills or meets the requirement of the African Union. The borders that we have is the borders that we inherited from the colonials. So for that reason, we are not defining new borders. The borders we have is that. So Somaliland has a stable government. It has clearly defined boundaries. It has been, able to enter agreements and being able to participate in international forums, whether it's fighting against piracy or other fronts. Mm-hmm. So for that reasons, I don't, share the narrative that Somaliland Somaliland recognition will create chaos. I would say the opposite. The creation of Somaliland will be important to the region. As we already seen, the role Somaliland has played for the past 30 years in the region.
Right. The World Bank estimates the GDP per capita of Somaliland at just about $348,000, dollars. I mean, which would make it the 4th poorest country in the world were it independent. But it still is a relatively stable region by its standards. What would you attribute the stability of Somaliland to, especially owing to the terrorist issues going on across the region?
Well, Michelle, to share with you, Somaliland have not had any terrorism for the past 15 years. In fact, for those 29 years that we have been independent and separated from Somalia, we've only had one single terrorist attack. If you look at, for instance, countries like Ethiopia, I'm sure in Kenya, Djibouti, I'm sure have had much more, far more terrorist activities happening. So for that reason, we've been very successful at securing our borders. We are playing a very important role when it comes to piracy and fighting that. In fact, our Hargeisa prison is currently hosting good numbers of those who were caught during the piracy activity and were taken to court by the international community. So for that part of it, we are playing part with the international community when it comes to piracies, terrorism, and other fronts. So I think in the future, we are hoping that Somaliland is going to have a significant roles, and we would hopefully play even more once we get recognition of getting Somalia a stable government, and because we are Somalis and we know each other and we can help in that. But at the moment, it's very hard for us to get involved with that situation because of the recognitions, and for that reason, we don't want to meddle with the Somali issues and create any confusions.
All right, finally, Ambassador, what is next for Somaliland in the push for international recognition?
Well, as we speak today, actually, yesterday, the Somaliland and Taiwan government has signed a bilateral agreement. That is another indicative that the international community is looking to the Somaliland situations. Our president visited various countries in Africa. He was in Ethiopia and Djibouti and other parts of Africa. So he's also been into UAE. So there is growing interest in Somaliland when it comes to international community. I think people are getting tired of the situation in Somalia as it is. And the narrative that Somaliland becoming independent will create a chaos is not there anymore. So we are hopeful that that very soon that Somaliland recognition will be coming our ways. And until then, we will not rest, and we will continue our diplomatic shuttles.
All right, many thanks. That is Ambassador Bashe Omar. He is